Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll be taking you through the key business stories that you need to know about across the African continent, from Cairo to Johannesburg and from Nairobi all the way to Lagos in West Africa. I'm Raman Yang in Nairobi. Here's what's coming up. The South African Reserve Bank has raised rates to 5.75%. We'll be looking at the impact on its economy. The Brics Bank is now on paper, but how sustainable is it? We'll be looking at its sustainability. And Somalia's presidency is in the focus of alleged diversion of the country's assets abroad. Let's bring you up to speed, however, the latest on the Malaysian Airline, which crashed in Ukraine very close to the Russian border. Reuters is reporting that dozens of bodies were scattered around the smouldering wreckage of the Boeing 777, which crashed in eastern Ukraine. And emergency services rescue workers said at least 100 bodies have been found at the scene near the village of Grabovo. And that debris from the wreckage was scattered across an area about 15 kilometers or so in diameter. Now, the Malaysian Airline lost track of the flight, which was en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, and it was carrying about 300 people at the time of that particular incident. A little more news for you on that story. Vladimir Putin has expressed deep condolences to the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Najib Razak, following the crash of the Malaysian Airline passenger plane over Ukrainian territory, in which, of course, several people have died. The President of Russia asked the Prime Minister of Malaysia to convey his deepest sympathy and support to the victims' families. Now, the airliner, flight MH17, was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. It had about 295 people on board when it went down in Ukraine, close to the Russian border. Now on to South Africa. Consumers are in for a bit of pain after the South African Reserve Bank decided to hike rates. The Reserve Bank Governor, Gail Marcus, announced a 25 basis point hike in the country's repurchase rate. Now, the prime lending rate in South Africa effectively is 5.75%. In delivering the decision in Pretoria earlier today, Marcus said that the country's economic growth outlook had deteriorated as a result of protracted strikes in the mining and manufacturing sectors. The continent's second largest economy shrunk in the first quarter of the year, down 0.6%, and growth has been revised down to 1.7% for the year. High inflation rate of about 6.6%, driven by increasing food prices, and a weakening rand is also affecting growth.
The MPC faces an increasingly difficult dilemma of rising inflation and slowing growth. The core mandate of the bank remains price stability. But at the same time, in achieving this mandate, we have to be mindful of the impact of our actions on economic growth and tread a fine line between acting effectively to address the inflation objective while not undermining growth unduly. The MPC has decided to continue on its gradual normalization path and raise the repo rate by 25 basis points to 5.75% per annum, effective from Friday, 18th of July.
So then, rates do go up, but this, of course, always posed a very interesting dilemma for the South African Reserve Bank. Let's bring you up to speed with the reactions and analysis of that particular decision. Angelo Coppola is part of our business team in South Africa. He's live in Johannesburg for us right now. Angelo, what kind of reactions are we getting to today's rate hike?
Okay, well, basically we're starting with it's little, too late, according to one analyst. Another one says that the MPC and the governor are fence-sitting, they're not making a decision, and they're going through the motions. One analyst suggested to me that the repo rate is at least 2% below what it should be. The basic fact is that middle-class South Africa is probably only going to buy a few burgers less at the end of July, and the breadline in South Africa, which is generally debt-free because they can't afford credit, it doesn't really make any much or little difference in their lives. So while the SARB is sending a message out there, I'm hearing from some of the analysts I speak to, they're not sure who they're sending that message to. Raman?
Indeed, but the governor, however, did make some fairly interesting arguments in the MPC statement that we were reading earlier today. Here's one of them. Monetary policy should not be seen as the growth engine of the economy. End of quote. Does the ACRB here essentially see itself being asked to resolve a problem that really is none of its business, that of stagnant growth?
Well, Raman, the bottom line here is that the SARB growth forecast has been halved in the last 12 months. It was 3.4% a year ago. It's now been revised down to 1.7%. As you said earlier, that inflation target range is now sitting at 6.6%. That's 0.6% higher than what it should be. So it's possible that the governor is feeling a little bit of pressure from maybe her political partners in government. Analysts say that what should have happened is the MPC should have increased their rate at the last meeting. They didn't do it, and possibly that was a politically driven motive there. But their mandate does remain managing the inflation rate, while the governor is actually speaking about looking after price stability. It's about the inflation rate, and the MPC hasn't done that well at the moment. There is an added challenge. It's administered prices and their impact. Electricity prices have gone up. She has no control there. Fuel prices have gone up. We've got a weak currency that's causing imported inflation, and this is all outside of the MPC's control. So she's stuck between a rock and a hard place, Rama.
Indeed. All the same, she has called for structural reforms with a fairly strong emphasis on mending ties between organised labour on one hand and employers on the other. What specific reforms need to be made in South Africa?
Well, Raman, we've been discussing this for the last nearly 6 months now. It's a difficult question to answer because that relationship between labour and business owners is fraught. It's only got prominence because the NUM is involved via COSATU with the ANC Tripartite Alliance. On the other hand, we're hearing a little while ago that government is thinking about a strike breaking mechanism. And obviously the unions aren't going to like that. So there's no easy solution to this problem. It's going to cause tension. And let's not forget about the business owners. They want to curtail costs. That's how they're incentivized in terms of their salaries. And the unions want a living wage. So there is no simple solution. And then there's some good news though, Ryan. Today we heard that RB Platts and NUM have reached a wage agreement without going on strike. So there is some good news there. Raman?
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much for the update. That's CCTV's Angelo Coppola. They're live in Johannesburg. In fact, if you can get your hands on the MPC statement, definitely worth reading. Some fairly interesting arguments being made there about wage demands being completely out of sync with productivity and inflation as well. Now let's pick up on something that Angelo's just spoken about. The Royal Bafokeng Platinum Company and the National Union of Mine Workers, they've announced a 3-year wage deal with increases of between 7% at supervisory level to 10.5% for rock drill operators. And as he said, there was absolutely no strike involved. The deal, of course, also does include a housing scheme. These revised wages will now raise the total labour cost of the company by about 9.1% on average over 3 years.
There was not even a hint, not even a thought that there would be a dispute. Not even an idea that there would be a dispute. Because firstly, we needed to make sure that we were aligned in the direction we wanted the wage agreement to take going forward. So we wanted to make sure that there is no mistake, no comeback, no one feels hard done by after the agreement, and therefore it got a lot of scrutiny. If you look at our agreement, it's unique. It's an agreement of its own kind. It drives the lives of people. It does not drive the penny in the pocket on a short-term basis.
The International Monetary Fund has approved a plan to offer support to Tanzania's government in maintaining economic stability as it works to cut its fairly large current account deficit. Now, the IMF forecasts GDP growth at about 7% this year in Tanzania, with inflation, which is around 6% right now, falling gradually towards the government's target of 5%. Tanzania is expected to reduce its current account deficit gradually over the medium term from the current levels of about 14% of GDP. The IMF qualifies its relatively sunny outlook by pointing to reforms that are being done by Tanzanian authorities with a view to improving the investment climate in the country and to diversify economic activity as well. The IMF says the country needs to create solid plans, however, for the management of resources from natural wealth, especially revenues from natural gas in the offshore fields that have been discovered off Tanzania. Those are expected to start really pumping in the money from the early 2020s. Right then, Brics, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. The first part of this bulletin really has just been about them completely. But they also caused quite the stir this week when they signed a deal to set up a development bank. But some economists question whether those 5 widely different countries can actually maintain the momentum displayed this week. Growth in most of them, including China, is slowing down. Sudan talked to several economists from global banks to get their perspectives on the future of the BRICS.
BRICS countries make up over 40% of the world's population, but economic growth is running into speed bumps, cautioned by the IMF, and the worry is spreading. Some analysts say, while global GDP is on the rise, the BRICS countries' economic prospects continue to disappoint. But this view is not echoed by some other experts who think, despite slower growth, the BRICS remain a dynamic force.
As biggest emerging markets, they will still be quite important. Last few years, the BRICS still contributed close to half of global growth. So that's how much. That's in terms of how much contribution these countries are contributing, right? So they are very important entities.
China now is the second largest economy. India is quite a sizable economy. If Mr. Modi can continue to reform, India could experience fast economic growth in the next few years. So you can see that the BRICS, to some extent, could help counterbalance the G3 economy in the future.
Speaking of balance and counterbalance, let's move on to the markets and see what money's been doing across equities in Africa. Not much movement on several of these counters. Of course, a slight correction in some of them in Nairobi, in Egypt as well. The Nigerian All-Share Index also down a quarter. However, South Africa is fairly interesting. The market essentially shrugged off the rate decision from the ACRB, and Woolworths, which just wrapped up a $2 billion acquisition of an Aussie retail chain, David Jones, also ended the day lower. It closed down about 2.2%. Coming up next, we'll be looking at Somalia's presidency. It's under fire over alleged diversion of the country's assets. We'll also have the details of a fairly ambitious project to convert most public service vehicles in South Africa to running on gas instead of petrol. The details are coming up next. Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies.
From small businesses to large-scale enterprises, hear directly from entrepreneurs behind the story. It's about putting you in the picture so you know where Africa fits in the global context.
Global Business, weekdays at this time on CCTV Africa.
We do know that the strike isn't anywhere near close to coming to an end either. That means that those workers are going to sink even further into poverty.
Welcome back to the program. You're watching Global Business Africa from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Let's come back with the United Nations Monitoring Group on Eritrea and Somalia. It has accused the Horn of Africa country of some government officials, including the country's president, of conspiring to divert the country's assets which are being recovered abroad. Now, all of those accused of improper conduct in this year's report have denied the charges. But as Mohammed Himoge reports, if the findings are confirmed, this may frustrate efforts to attract foreign investment as the government focuses on the country's reconstruction.
The UN monitors allege a conspiracy that involves the Somali president, former foreign minister and a US-based law firm, Shulman Rogers. Good afternoon. The UN panel that monitors compliance with sanctions says the plot supposedly involved conspiracy to divert Somali assets recovered abroad.
This is the most bizarre and baseless allegations ever against me. Defaming personalities and attacking the credibility of honest and hardworking people is a serious violation of human dignity and social humiliation. Someone should be punished for this atrocious crime.
Even unconfirmed, it's still an astonishing state of affairs. This is the second monitoring group report since President Mohamud took office. The first one termed the Somali Central Bank as a slush fund for politicians. The office of the president said the government will respond to these allegations only when the report is officially released.
When they are making allegations as big as calling the Somali president a thief, they have to come up with facts that are credible. Personally, I usually don't take seriously what the monitoring group writes, because I have seen them writing so many different, wild ideas and statements.
These are, however, allegations that could potentially discourage foreign investors. Donors have been specific about proper management of public finances, so these new allegations of impropriety that involves the country's president might affect donor perception of public finance management. The former foreign minister says the monitors didn't even respond to her concerns when she contacted them.
Mr. Chopra refused to respond to my emails repeatedly. In those emails, I was requesting from him to meet me to discuss any matter concerning myself in this report.
Most of the said overseas assets were frozen at the outset of the civil war in 1991, which the Somali government has been trying to recover. Mohamed Hirmoge, CCTV, Mogadishu.
Right then, let's bring you perspectives from both sides of the story. Mohamed Hirmoge is in Mogadishu. Patrice Howe joins us as well from New York. Hirmoge, let's start with you. What exactly is at stake here? Exactly how much does Somalia's government have trapped overseas in frozen or unclaimed assets?
Robert, these assets include both cash and gold held in foreign bank accounts, as well as Somali government property on foreign soil. However, according to the Office of the President, due to capacity, of the President says due to capacity limitations of Somali institutions and lack of data records, the government of Somalia cannot estimate the amount of money or the exact location where these assets are held. Having said that, we have reasons to believe that we are talking about really huge sums of money and assets here, because the Somali government had immediately appointed a financial governance committee that had solicited advice from the World Bank's stolen assets recovery initiative on both asset recovery and the Shulman Rogers company contract. And that actually is an indicator that this is not a wild goose chase, and we're speaking about millions of dollars in both cash and gold.
Indeed. Patrice, as far as the claims of asset misappropriation are concerned, however, what are the indisputable facts here? We know, for example, that the Somali government granted and then revoked the power of attorney it had given Shulman Rogers. But beyond that, what really is indisputable?
Well, it's really hard to say what the indisputable facts at this point are, really, because this conspiracy is in most parts an allegation at this point of the process. Of course, it's a he said, she said situation where the UN monitoring group is calling foul. They're saying that there have been, quote, multiple secret contracts and, quote, misappropriation of public resources. On the other hand, the accused says we are innocent. So really, it's a back and forth at this point, and more investigation needs to be concluded with that report when it is, or if it is, made public. Of course, one indisputable fact is that the UN monitoring group has looked into Hassan Sheikh Mohammed's government before. Back in 2013, they were looking into allegations that the government had actually made private transactions and withdrawals from the Somali bank. They were using it for private reasons. So there is a history there. Of course, this allegation against Shulman Rogers, as the correspondent mentioned, of course, is in regard to that contract. And really, at this point, they have not seen that contract yet. So it will really take them sort of looking into that to come out with a final statement. But really, what can't be disputed now is that the innocent are saying, or the alleged are saying, we are innocent. And also these foreign investors who came in to actually rebuild Mohammed's government could be scared out if these allegations are found true.
Indeed. Hirmoge, in 2013, as Patrice mentioned, the monitoring group did accuse the government of using the central bank as a sort of private slush fund. I believe that was the exact phrase used. This year, it's zeroing in on asset misappropriation. Now, assuming that we're giving them the benefit of doubt, why is fiscal governance in Somalia so weak, given all the goodwill that the country has enjoyed in the last few years?
That is.
Well, unfortunately, it does seem that we do have a few technical issues over there. Final question to you, Patrice. Shulman Rogers, the American firm at the heart of some of these latest claims, says that the chairman of the monitoring group is not, and I'm quoting here, a reliable source for truthful information. Is there any evidence at all to back that particular position?
Well, no concrete evidence at this point. I did reach out to Schulman this morning to ask for a further comment on that. They were not available for comment. However, they did speak publicly after these allegations surfaced. And of course, they called out the chairman of the group for being unreliable and really said that though there is no evidence, they will continue to defend themselves against this claim. It may be too soon to do so because really this group has not got a hold of that contract yet, and they have not seen the report. However, Reuters has taken a look at it. It was released to them, and they have not found any concrete data that really points to the law firm. So perhaps more analysis of both those contracts and also the report will work in the law firm's favor.
Indeed. Patrice Howard in New York. A little earlier we were with Mohammed Morge, a flimsy, if you will, satellite connection over there. Vagaries of live television. These things do happen. But thank you very much for your time, both of you. Let's move on to South Africa. Public-private partnership project there is slowly reforming the public transport system. The project is still in its first phase, and it aims to convert the country's 250,000 plus minibus taxis from running on petrol or diesel to natural gas. Now, the rising cost of fuel, of course, is a fairly powerful incentive to make the switch and lower the country's carbon footprint at the same time. Here's Sumitri Naidu with the details on what's hot.
Taxis are the most widely used mode of transport in South Africa. Almost 40% of the working population use public transport daily. More than 2/3 are taxi commuters. Private gas company CNG Holdings teamed up with the Public Investment Corporation to launch the Taxi Gas project in Gauteng. Taxi operators that signed up had their fuel tanks converted into gas tanks at no cost under the pilot project. An average gas kit costs $2,000. It takes just a few hours to complete a conversion, and taxis are able to get back on the road using natural gas.
They would then take the back seat out, bolt down the cylinders under the seat with a cradle over it. They would put in a regulator inside the vehicle, and it's got a filling nozzle in the front of the vehicle, so then when the vehicle fills up, the gas will then go back into the cylinder, stored at 200 bar, and then as the vehicle is driving on gas, it will draw down, go through the regulator and be injected directly into the engine at about 2 bar.
This is the first compressed natural gas filling station in South Africa. It's based here in Johannesburg. Now that the pilot project has proved successful, CNG Holdings hopes to work with government to bring online more stations like this across the country.
A litre of gas costs $1 compared to $1.4 for a litre of petrol. This gives taxi owners a saving of up to 40% on their fuel bill.
When I'm comparing gas with the petrol, gas is saving more rather than petrol, because when we were using petrol, a day we were using almost 800 rand. When we are comparing with the gas we almost use 400 rand, and there's a lot of money we are saving when we are using gas.
At least now I can manage to make a lot of checking. It depends on a day, because of by the time I was using a petrol, I was catching almost 500, 550, but now I can able to catch 700, 750 a day.
To use the gas, it's much easier due to fuel consumption, you know, and seeing the petrol always goes up. I'll suggest, if I'm a taxi owner, I'll suggest to use a gas system.
And with the gas price set by the country's energy regulator, it's likely to remain affordable.
The gas price has been very stable, so we've seen consistent savings over the last couple of years. We believe that the gas will continuously stay far below the petrol prices.
The gas system is it's a very lovely system, because reason being, since the gas came to South Africa that we have it now, even it's light on petrol as well.
This will also mean a 25% reduction in the country's carbon footprint for each vehicle. Natural gas is also safer than fuel. Taxi operators seem to be pleased with the move.
I'm happy with the gas because of I spend less petrol. By the time I was using petrol, I was filling almost 700, 800 a day. But when I'm using gas, at least I use 400 rand a day. So I can see where I'm going.
The first phase of the project cost around $14 million, with 1,000 taxis being converted in Gauteng. There is currently just one gas station operational in the province. 6 more stations are set to open in the province. For taxis, there's an immediate saving. For government, it means a lower carbon footprint, and it's hoped the project will translate into lower transport costs for commuters. Sumitra Nadu, CCTV, Johannesburg.
A cleaner, kinder public transport system, who would have thought? Let's move on to a first break in the programme. Here's what's coming up. When you come back, we'll be telling you how banana waste is being turned into biodegradable paper and quite a bit of money in Uganda. Definitely want to stick around for that. We'll see you in a few. On the 17th of July, you're watching Global Business from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Now, Ugandans have found a lasting solution to getting rid of quite a bit of waste and earning a buck at the same time, specifically banana waste. It's being converted into briquettes and even biodegradable paper in the East African nation, and researchers over there do hope that this may cut the wastage of Uganda's natural resources. Michael Baleke filed this report for Grassroots Tonight.
Christopher Mukasa wades through his neighborhood in search of waste. In particular, he's after banana peels. He will earn $2 for this 10-kilogram sack. At this business, they'll be turned into sources of energy, thanks to one researcher's innovation meant to reduce charcoal consumption.
Cows have been dying and places are becoming deserts. So we're getting a desert that in the sense that people have already overcut trees for making charcoal, this black charcoal. They're called common black charcoal. And that one, it's an issue. So we have come up with a product, the briquettes, which are making from the banana wastes.
About 15 kilometers from the city center of Uganda's capital Kampala, more than 100 people are employed turning would-be waste to better use. Dried, crushed and burnt to carbon powder, it is then mixed with cassava flour before a locally improvised machine transforms it into briquettes. A low-cost fuel for cooking and an alternative to firewood or charcoal.
Charcoal takes a short time on the stove. You have to keep adding when cooking food. But when I'm using briquettes, I only place a few pieces and cook until the food is ready. I save almost half of what I would spend on charcoal every day.
Over 500 kilograms of briquettes are produced here every day and are gradually becoming popular among locals who have previously had to spend twice as much on charcoal from cut-down trees. Atayri says this technology is simple and can be operated by rural young people and women. It is not only environmentally friendly, it could also provide employment to the cottage industries across the country where banana growing is popular. From banana peels, the company also makes shoppers' bags, banana textiles and ornamental crafts.
The main core product is making bags. Though some people now have come, they are interested in the papers now for making their own packages, either for packing the chocolates, for packing sweets and what. People are doing these, people of graphics designers.
Uganda is Africa's largest producer of bananas, and now that crop also represents a sustainable energy source. Innovators here believe if their technology is embraced countrywide, it could help reduce the number of trees cut down for charcoal and also provide a livelihood for those employed in the business. Michael Baleke, CCTV, Kampala, Uganda.
And from the Pearl of East Africa, that's it for this edition of Global Business. Send your feedback on the program to globalbusinessafrica@cctv.com. We're also online pretty much wherever you are, so are we. Facebook, Twitter, the lot. We'll see you over there. The news continues 24/7. Thank you for watching. I'm Ramanya.